Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Can you just kick off with a brief introduction to this really original and brilliant film? The score, what can audiences expect if they watch it?
Thank you. It's funny. I struggle to describe it succinctly because, as you say, it's different to anything you've probably ever seen. It's a mixture of a road movie, a love story, a heist film, and a musical. Everything all thrown in and into a sort of stew, which I think works rather wonderfully. Other people will have to make up their own minds, but thank you for your saying you enjoyed it. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I don't think I've ever seen a film that tries to combine all those elements. So what was the starting point for you? What was the original idea? Did you start with kind of the idea of a heist film and then bring in the music, or did the music idea come first? What was the seed of the idea?
Yes, it was the seed of the idea was more of the heist film and the story of the two small time crooks going on a job together and where they would meet someone and their lives would be changed. And so that was the germ of the idea, and the music came along later. And but it's partly, as you say, it's wanting to do something that doesn't feel like it's something you've seen 100 times before. So although it's fun to play with tropes and expectations and to have elements that people will recognize and think, oh, I've seen that before, but then you say, but you haven't seen this, and try to get something that feels fresher. But the songs also, I think, do a different job. They're not just there for a bit of fun. They enrich it in different ways. I think they give you insights into the characters' lives in a very interesting way, I think. So it's not, they're not literal in the way that a lot of musical songs are, when they'll be telling you the story or telling you what the character's thinking. These are much more sort of mood pieces that are informing you in a less obvious, less literal way about what's going on in the hearts of these people, and often at odds with what they might be saying on the screen. So I'm trying to create a tension, trying to create sort of contradictions and things that will jolt you, and that won't feel natural, as a way of provoking different emotions in the audience. So that's the intention.
Mm. And you've managed to sort of put together some of the most exciting, British talent we have at the moment. Johnny Flynn, who I know is, obviously already a musician, but from that, I think it was his debut screen performance, was it, in Beast, which was, absolutely phenomenal, and just seems to be doing more and more exciting things. And of course, Will Poulter and Naomi Aki. So how did you kind of put all these people together? And
Yeah.
they have kind of great chemistry on screen. The banter just works so well. So how was it on set as well?
It was wonderful, and they all got on so well, which is great. And once you have a set that's working like that, where people just enjoy each other, it makes life so much easier, and that they get on, really well with themselves and with everyone else around. They're all great in terms of, just being part of a company of people. It's such a high pressure environment, making a low budget independent film. Everyone has to be pulling together, and you couldn't ask for three better team players, as it were. So that was wonderful. It was incredible getting the three of them, as you say. I mean, for a film of this scale, to have that level of talent attached, not one, not two, but three of them. And also, I mean, some of the other roles, I hesitate to say lesser roles, they're very important, but they less screen time. Lydia Wilson is, a fabulously accomplished actress, and Lucian Zamati, who's amazing and playing these smaller roles, and that really completes the sense that, everyone is working at a level which is, immensely high, and it makes everyone else also raise their game, I think. But it was, in part, obviously, having Johnny's songs involved. He was the obvious person to go to play Mike. So once he agreed to let us use his songs, and agreed to play the character of Mike, the rest of the pieces fell into place relatively easily. Certainly, Naomi became involved very early on, and at the suggestion of our casting agent, who said, "Look no further. This is the person for you." And I met her, and thought she was wonderful, and she had a great appreciation for the script. So she signed on pretty much immediately, and Will came along later, after there was a slight, mess with someone else who was attached, and then had another offer. And again, this is a very much par of the course with independent filmmaking. You can have cast attached, but anything can come along, and you're constantly pushing back your shoot date. So that's something that forces people's hands sometimes if they get another offer, and you can't keep saying to them no, but just wait another week, wait another month. So you have to expect that, and it's often a question of casting whoever is around and available at the time, and willing to do it. But so we were immensely fortunate that Will happened to be in town at the right time, and we got the script to him again through our casting director, and he enjoyed it and agreed to meet, and then we managed to woo him into taking part.
And coming to the music aspect, so were these songs that already existed, Johnny's songs that he'd already written, which then you sort of found a home for at the right place in the film, or how did that work in terms of kind of making it fit?
Mostly they were. Johnny's, when I first decided that I needed to do something to kind of give it a shot in the arm as a script, and I often work listening to music, and I'll find particular music for whatever I'm writing that sort of fits the mood. So it's having a soundtrack of my own going on in my head, and it's not necessarily songs that I'm going to use in something or employ in any other way, but it's just to help me escape sitting in my office on my own and trying to come up with ideas. And on this occasion, Johnny had a new album out that I was listening to, and it just felt so right mood-wise, and some of the songs just started suggesting themselves to me as songs that might work in the script, and I just thought, I'm going to try integrating one of them into the script and have the characters sing this, and let's see what happens. After it, I found that it worked really nicely with the first song that I tried. I thought, okay, well, let's throw some more in there and see what happens. And so I started just trawling through his back catalogue, and this was before ever approaching him or anything. I just started looking at all of his songs and seeing the ones that felt, and they didn't, again, it's this thing, I didn't want them to feel like they're literally the characters expressing their views. It was something more intangible, that's to do with a feeling, or some kind of evocation of something very deep rooted is what I was looking for. And but it was uncanny that a lot of them actually chimed extraordinarily. And the obvious example that I give to people is that I had written a character called Gloria, and he had a song with a chorus that's Gloria, and that was one of those kind of eureka moments when I thought, well, I have to have this one, and where do I put it then becomes the issue. And the song at the end, Hard Road, was just such an obvious one as well as a climactic piece. It felt so right with these characters driving away and this incredibly beautiful melancholic song playing, and then other ones just started fitting into place, and now I can't conceive of anything else in those places. Although at the time there were a couple of them that I tried moving around, but pretty much they sort of placed themselves. The one that Johnny sings, Hal, always felt that was his character and that it was coming out. So it was really strange sort of sense of almost fatalism that these things just work so well. And actually, we never really had to, he reworked them musically, but we never did anything lyrically or anything like that, although we could have if we'd felt the need to, but it just didn't seem to be a need.
And I guess on paper it doesn't seem like it would work, and especially it's like the slightly gritty setting, you'd expect it to feel incongruous, yet it feels so natural when they do just start singing. Well, so maybe it is owing to this fact that it's not like just them singing what they're doing, that they're self-contained songs that you've kind of repurposed.
I think, to me, that's exactly right. And to me, it works beautifully, exactly as I envisaged it. There was a big question mark over, would it work? And would it work the way I meant it to? One of the wonderful things was how many people signed on very quickly. We'd send the script out to people, and whether it's cast, but also crew, our production designer, our editor, our DPs, all these people all got it and jumped on board saying, you know, this is wonderful. Is it going to work? And well, we don't know. Having said that, you know, obviously some people don't find that it works, which is fair enough also. And it's a shame when I hear that, because I think, you know, it does, and it needs to be approached on its own terms. People need to just wipe their minds clean and embrace it. And if you don't do that, if you start thinking, hold on a second, I thought I was going to see a musical, or hold on, I thought I was going to see a heist film, you're not going to think it works. You've got to just open your hearts and your minds and say, okay, you know, entrance me. And I think that's how all films really should be approached.
And in terms of having that kind of maybe initial hesitation, did you have that from the actors? Because of course Johnny's already a singer and he's singing his own songs, so maybe for him it was like an easier sell. But I don't know for Will and Naomi how that worked. But they all got incredible voices. So was that kind of you had that in mind casting them, or that was slightly incidental?
No, the voices. I mean, I think there must have been a certain nervousness, because those two, yes, in particular, haven't sung like that in a film before. Although Will does a little turn in We're the Millers, which is wonderful and very, you know, you can see it on YouTube and it's great. But we didn't approach it thinking we've got to get the best singers out there. We approached it thinking we've got to get the best actors. And if they can't sing, it won't matter, because that will become part of the charm of it and of their characters. But the moment when we went into the studios to record the songs and they opened their mouths and boy could they sing, was a lovely moment when we just, and it was one of those moments when you think, yeah, well, this really can work, and it can work the way that we imagined it. But I think going into it before that, when they read the scripts, it was a leap into the dark for them as much as for us. They were thinking, this is great fun and it's something that I'd like to do. It's very different. You know, how's it going to work? And I think that's a question that everyone had, and sort of myself included. You know, it was a leap of faith.
And coming back to kind of the humor, and I guess a lot of it is in the script, but of course with anything that's, you know, got a comedic thread to it, it's also in the delivery. And yeah, they're definitely Johnny and Will, but of course Naomi as well. They've all got such brilliant comic timing, and just, I mean, you know, and thinking of how those two characters as well play off against each other, because, you know, obviously Will's character is supposed to be the sort of slightly dense one, but actually he's incredibly amiable and charming, whereas Johnny's character is incredibly caustic. So they're kind of like yin and yang a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the humor is immensely important to it, and is a big part of it, but also, exactly as you say, the different types of humor. And I think it's a very important part in explaining, you know, why Will and Naomi are able to form this bond so quickly and to sort of get each other, but at the same time there's a resistance because of who he appears to be. But that's something he's trying to break away from. So, you know, and humor is a way for both of them to cope with the world, and they have that in common. And then Johnny just has this very cynical, very caustic, as you say, approach. And I love the dynamic in that there's two different dynamics in Workers. One is the Johnny Will one, and the other is the Will Naomi one, and they both work very nicely independently of each other. And Will is a bit different with Johnny than he is with Naomi, which is as it should be. And yeah, I think that always was very important. And Will, you know, has a long history of doing comedy as well as drama. He's been in some. He's often, you know, has some lovely funny moments in quite a few of his films. But to me, a film like this, you've got to have humor to leave in it, and it's really all about that, trying to capture that warmth, to give it, it's, you know, it's not a realistic film. It's a film that's a kind of, you know, flight of fancy, and not in the tradition of these, you know, kind of British gangster films or whatever. It's a very different thing, and so it needed to have, on every front, it needed to have things that would signpost you away from that and make you feel, okay, this is, you know, and as you say, the thing about Will being ostensibly the sort of dumb one, but then coming out with these moments of brilliance is so essential to his character. And anyone who doesn't understand that, won't name any names, but I had a review this week where someone was picking up this as a contradiction and saying, but it doesn't work because there's this contradiction. It's exactly because of that contradiction that he works as a character. You know, there's something in there that's trying to get out. He is someone who embodies these contradictions and who hasn't been formally educated, but he has nuggets of stuff that he has that's just in there from a lifetime of doing whatever he's done. And he has a native intelligence, and it means that these things sometimes come out, and sometimes they come out in the right way and sometimes the wrong way. And I think it's what makes him really work as a character, that combination of things. So I mean, I just couldn't be happier with his portrayal of the character. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, and just kind of building on that, for me, it also just feels, you know, quintessentially British film, and not even just because of the setting, but because of the humor. And maybe there is a little bit of that British snobbery in there. Thinking about what you're saying about Will's character, if you've not been formally educated, then you're not assumed to know anything about Shakespeare or be able to spout, you know, lines or things like that. But that's, you know, something we need to change.
There could very well be something of that. I should say at this point, I consider myself Irish, so you know, I coming at it from that angle, it's interesting to think about the British with their attitudes of class and who can be quoting Shakespeare and who shouldn't be. It's, yeah, I mean, there's maybe something to that, but there's also, I think there isn't a big tradition in British cinema for making films of this type. Not that this is really a type, but it's, you know, the kind of form of escapism and of mixing things and throwing in, you know, classical references along with Shakespeare and the rest in this kind of a setting, I think is not something that people are used to here, so they don't know quite how to react to it. And you know, I think, well, there was a lovely actually comment in the New York Times actually which really got it, where the woman said, who was reviewing, whose name I'm sorry to say I've forgotten, said that, you know, the point is that everyone has some poetry in them and some music in them, and that this is, you know, what I'm doing here is I'm saying it doesn't really matter who you are. You can still come out with great funny quips and quote Shakespeare and do whatever. It's not, you know, it shouldn't be bound up with any notions of you're appearing in a particular kind of film, and so you have to, you know, toe the line. It's a really blinkered way of attitude towards filmmaking. People who somehow try and put you in a box immediately and say, this shouldn't be doing this because it's meant to be this kind of film, or, you know, who think that somehow because there's some humor that it must be, you know, Tarantino-esque or Guy Ritchie-esque. I mean, it couldn't be further from these things. And it's never intended to be anything like those things. And the dialogue isn't dialogue that either of those guys would write. But people see kind of people quipping, and they immediately think, oh, that's the box. I need to think about that in these terms, which is just lazy, frankly.
Well, I guess in sort of building on all of those things you just said, you know, what do you hope people take away? And it does seem that, like, kind of subverting people's expectations is a big one, because yeah, maybe when you see someone who's supposed to be kind of like a bit rough around the edges, you know, amateur criminal, then they wouldn't be able to sort of show that vulnerability of, you know, singing a song. And it's just constantly challenging people to sort of open their minds a bit.
I've never thought of it in, you know, sort of class terms or anything like that. So those aren't expectations I set out to undermine. I mean, I certainly, in terms of your expectations of what you're going to see at the cinema, I like to think I'm presenting you with something which won't be like anything you've ever seen. And I hope that you can, you know, open your hearts and your minds to that and accept it for what it is. And it's interesting, you know, just how much resistance there is to that, because I don't quite understand it. You think, you know, everyone's always crying out for new things, fresh things, and then you say, well, how about this? And they go, yeah, but, you know, shouldn't it be more like that? And it's frustrating. You feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall sometimes. But I mean, the expectations that I'd like to challenge, I suppose, are just to do with what kind of cinema we have, and does it all have to be the same, or can it be completely different? And even if you don't enjoy it, just accept it for what it is, or you know, seek out new things, fresh things, without getting drawn into the question of you know, what working class people can be like or should be like. I don't think of my characters in those terms at all. There's no question that they come from you know, further down in the socioeconomic stratas. But I'm not setting out to make a political piece. It just so happens that they're guys who aren't very well off and who are desperate. And I think that's the important thing. It's just it's the issue of desperate people who have nothing and you know, need to survive, and that's the motivating thing. But that you can have those characters, they can come from any class at all. But then it's interesting to think about people when you talk with people from all walks of life, or just sit listening to them, that you know, the range of things that they do reference is always so interesting, and the amount of awareness they've got of all things cultural. But again, you know, you're all expected to be in your box and to only talk about, you know, I don't know, football if you're from a particular class, or Shakespeare or opera if you're from another class. And it's nonsense. It really is. You know, who were the people who were going to see Shakespeare in the 16th century? You know, it's
well, I think I'm out of time, but just very quickly, do you know what you're going to be working on next? Are you going to do something experimental again, or?
Yeah, well, it's nice you say so. I don't know if it's experimental. I suppose it's experimental formally just because of the mix of genres. The next thing is also genre bending, and is designed to annoy people again in that way. But it's very different genres. There's no musical element this time, but it's sort of British set, Western, current, contemporary, for want of better way of describing it. But that doesn't really explain it at all. So everyone will have to wait and see.
All right. Well, that sounds exciting. Well, I can't wait for everyone else also to get a chance to see the score. And thank you so much for sharing all that with us. It's been really great chatting to you. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.